What would you think if I told you that the word Hamas was actually in the Old Testament? And you will be not surprised when I explain to you in a moment what this word actually means. Obviously, unless you're living under a rock, you're aware that there's this Islamic terrorist group that is similar to ISIS, who is currently in the Gaza Strip and who has been attacking Israel rather. And in the midst of all this craziness, I was curious, what does the word Hamas actually mean? Obviously, Hamas would be an Arabic word, not a Hebrew word, but I think that you'll get the principle of what I'm referring to when we see it in Scripture. Because remember, if you didn't know, Muslims, which, by the way, if you didn't know, this is a religious war. This is not a geopolitical war. They're going to market it as a geopolitical war. But whenever you see any of these attacks happening, whenever you see these raped dead humans paraded in the streets, they're all saying Allah Akbar. They're not saying, yay, we're getting Israel back. That's not what they're saying. The only thing about this whole thing is about religion, right? And in religion, in their Quran, they are told to exterminate the Jews and the Christians. That if there is a Jew or a Christian hiding behind a rock or a tree, that at that point, the rocks and trees would cry out, there's a Jew behind me, there's a Christian behind me, go kill them. Because God so badly, or Allah so badly, wants the Jewish people and the Christians exterminated. And mind you, this is a belief system that has transpired over the Quran, where Allah blatantly loves the Christians and the the Christians and the Jews. And as a matter of fact, actually, Allah tells them, if you want to know whether to believe the words of Muhammad or not, you just ask the Christians or the Jews and they'll tell you. Actually, their own book will tell you to believe in them. And obviously, as the Christians and Jews over time said, no, it says nothing about Muhammad and Muhammad has nothing to do with God at all, then he started to say slowly, oh, we actually are enemies with each other. And then that changed from enemies to each other to actually we need to just kill these people, which is a pretty extreme transition. So let's look at this verse right here. This is in Psalms chapter 7, verse 16. It says, his mischief returns upon his own head, and on his own skull his violence descends. So you can see the word Hamas is right here in Hebrew, so you can see what it looks like, so you know that I'm not making that part up. But now let's just listen to what it sounds like.
Strong's H2555. Hamas. Hamas.
Sounds a whole lot like the exact same word I'm hearing being preached. And now let's look at what the word Hamas is translated to in English from Hebrew. Violence, violent, cruelty, wrong, false, cruel, damage, injustice, oppressor, or unrighteous. Now, if we look at the outline of biblical usage, this means with all of the times that the word's been used in the entirety of the Bible, here is the general consensus on what this word means using context clues. Violence, wrong, cruelty, injustice. Now let's look at the direct translation of the definition of the word in Hebrew. It's violence, implication wrong, unjust gain, cruelty, damage, false, injustice, oppressor, unrighteous, violent, violence, wrong. And then after that, if you want to, you can just have fun by looking at all of the times that exact same word Hamas is used in the Old Testament. And by the way, this is just, some of the results. There's a whole nother page of results like this. But you get the principle. This word is about the attack or the terror or the violence of a group of people or of a person that they're trying to put on somebody. How this is not just one of the additional overwhelming concerns and red flags of this religious organization is beyond me. It's not that they're like Muslims who like happen to kind of like feel like doing something violent today. Like literally they defined themselves under the word Hamas, right? When you think of like the name United States of America, there's a long history of why we have that name. And it's not ambiguous how we have that name either, but that name says a lot about us as a people, right? In the same way the name Hamas says a lot about these Islamic terrorists. And I want to emphasize, they are Islamic terrorists. You can argue that they're Palestinian terrorists, that they're Iranian terrorists, Jordan terrorists. They are Muslim terrorists. The whole point of this thing is Islam. The entire war is completely in context of their religious belief systems. And one other concern or challenge I want to present to you in this is the following. If, theoretically, they were to come to the United States, the kinds of people who they would be killing, raping, murdering, etc., is going to solely be in alignment with what their book tells them to do. They're just trying to do the right thing by what their book says. Jews, Christians, you are next. False converts or people who proclaim to follow Islam, who actually do not follow Islam, you're next. You are the kinds of people who should be worried. And then after all those people, just people who are not Muslims are next. So in order, Jew, Christian, and false Muslims, or people who have rejected Islam. And then the next is going to be all unbelievers. So if you're not Islamic, if you're not somebody who follows the words of the Quran, and there were to be a theoretical takeover of the West, which I don't think there is, but I'm just trying to draw perspective for you of what happened in Jerusalem, or excuse me, in Israel. It started to happen in the United States. Not only would you be the kind of person who'd be raped, murdered, killed, tortured, etc., but they would actually then make you pay what's called a jizya tax, which is pretty much a penalty or a fine that you have to pay because you chose not to convert to Islam. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is what we've seen happen with, again, ISIS, and now we're seeing with Hamas, of just taking your life, torturing you, raping, etc. This should be horribly concerning for us as Christians in regards to the landscape of Islam. And I'm not saying that should terrify us in regards to we should live in fear. I'm not saying that we should be scared, shaking in our boots. But I want you to have a really clear understanding of what Hamas says Hamas is. How they're trying to use any sort of marketing or political rhetoric to try to skirt by that is beyond me, but it shows people aren't even willing to do enough digging and searching to even see what the word itself means. Because if you saw, it would expose all